Shiksha Sarathi is about sharing and learning together, and as I was reading the document, the first place I stopped to reread was the part on the stages of Welcome to the 11th episode of Shiksha Sarathi. Today's episode is named Connecting the Dots, from the NCF 2022 for Foundation to the National Curriculum Framework Draft for School Education 2023. Shiksha Sarathi was designed to act as a catalyst to research, read, experiment and make the change needed, first in the early years and then continuing to right up to the senior classes in every corner of the country, and bring together the community of facilitators, teachers and parents. The aim of the whole shift in the education system is to celebrate the diversity of our vast, beautiful country, but weave a common thread of quality and skills while building the capacity of the teachers who have to lead this change. Today, we will try and connect the learning stages for better understanding of what is needed by the learner at each stage to design a curriculum of what is needed when it is needed. Shiksha Sarathi is about sharing and learning together, and as I was reading the document, the first place I stopped to reread was the part on the stages of child development, and I thought this must be our topic for today. Child development is influenced by the interplay of three different processes: the biological process or the nature, the cognitive and the learning processes or the experiences and the nurturing, and the social emotional process. We see that even adults are a combination of nature, nurture, and now a lot of importance is being given to the social emotional development, having an impact on the learning cycles, attitude, personalities and skills. A child's development is usually described in terms of periods corresponding to approximate age ranges. So first, the infancy. The period ranges from birth to about 24 months of age, where the child is highly dependent on adults. It is just before the child really comes to school. The early childhood, this period begins around 3, usually extends up to 7 to 8 years of age. Here the children begin to become more self-sufficient, spend more time with peers. It's also a period of intense exploration through play. This can be identified as the 5 years of foundation from nursery to class 2. Then you have the middle to late childhood. This developmental period is from about 7 to 8 years to about 11 years, when they master the fundamental capacities and are understanding what they need for survival, growth, interaction. They grow physically, emotionally and cognitively through exposure to wider world experiences and what is happening around them. This can be identified as classes 3, 4, 5. And then the adolescence. The transition period from childhood to early adulthood. Here the child enters the adolescence at approximately 12 to 13 years of age. They begin to grow rapidly, gain height, there are changes in the body contours, there are different characteristics that develop. And at this stage, the development of the identity, the quest for independence is the central theme in children. This can be identified in two parts: the 3 years of middle school, that is the 6th, 7th and 8th, and then the high school, which is the 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. So it's the last stage of the school education. And what struck me is the development across the domains being the common thread for all the levels, and how important it is for these domains to be developed at the appropriate time with the appropriate practices at the foundation level to really make an impact as they grow. So let's begin with the physical development. Infancy, where the height and weight increase rapidly and can be more than double at this stage. Infancy also is a sensory motor stage where reflex responses are the most prevalent, reflecting how infants respond adaptively to their environment before they've even had the opportunity to learn about it. In the early years now, the percentage of physical growth decreases. It's not as much as the infancy. In the middle and late childhood stage, it is sort of stable. And suddenly during adolescence, we see a rapid change in the physical attributes of children. Gross motor skills that involve large muscle activities, posture, walking, coordination, several signals and components that need to get the balance right, which is a task for little children. So therefore, a lot of activities are needed at the early stage of the children, and it has to be a dynamic classroom, not a sit and keep quiet routine. Gross motor skills improve dramatically during the childhood years. Fine motor skills involve finely tuned movements. In the infancy, it's more like grasping, reaching out, which is like a significant accomplishment. And then fine motor skills continue to develop through the childhood, and by about 4 years, they are much more precise. The children's holds are better, they can do more activities, and children can use their hands as tools by middle childhood, and by the time they reach the adolescence, they show the fine motor skills similar to those of adults. So this is a simple reason why play and discovery and not just transcription and sit down is needed at the early years. And as the children progress, the needs will vary, and more traditional work can be added, more written work can be added, but at the early years we should do what they need for their development. Now let's talk about the cognitive development at the different stages. So infancy. The infant organizes and coordinates sensory experiences, seeing, hear, with physical movements. Early childhood. The child's mental life is becoming more expansive with experiences. They have pictures in their mind, they have new vocabulary, and they have begun to make sense of others, getting a sense of how people and things work. And therefore, at this stage, you need interactive small group activities, large group activities, pair activities, a lot of peer learning, a lot of experiences, and then comes the middle childhood. By now, the children can think through, reason, use language and ideas, understand how people and things work. They can give order, and they have a better ability to memorize. They devise ways to remember better and are able to analyze, problem solve, imagine alternatives. So this is the stage where we can offer more complex activities to the children rather than starting the complex activities at early years when they're not really ready. And then comes the adolescence. The adolescent individual thinks in diverse and complex ways, a growing capacity for working with ideas, logical analysis. This enables them to plan, solve problems, systematically test solutions, think of variations. They're flexible in their thinking and can be reasonable. They can actually research. So experiences need to remain a part of this stage, but we can also add a lot of research, reading, and expression. Now the language development. So infancy, what happens? Among the milestones in the infant stage, you have the crying at birth, the cooing at 1 or 2 months, the babbling where they're trying to say things but you can't really understand them at 6 months, using gestures and babbling at 8 to 12 months, and they can recognize their names. They can speak the first words by the 10 to 15 months. They have a spurt of vocabulary by the 18th month, and 18 to 24 months is 2 words, 3 words being put together and being able to communicate. Early childhood, young children increase their grasp of language. They have a few rule systems, vocabulary development increases, conversational skills improve, and there is a need for a lot of listening and speaking activities to precede the reading and writing, and that is why this has to be a rich listening time for children. And then the middle childhood. The children gradually become more analytical, logical, and in their approach to words and grammar. So it's time to expand their knowledge of the syntax, understand better how to use language in appropriate ways, in the correct ways. give them a variety of activities. And then the adolescence. The activity and the language changes include more effective use of words, improvement, ability to understand metaphor, satire, the adult literary works, and improvements in writing. So time to give them a rich variety of literature and variations. The reason we must see this as a canvas is that when we plan the curriculum for any domain, we have to see that it is appropriate for that stage of life. We cannot try and fit in what was needed to be done later at an earlier stage and then try and solve the learning gaps which were created because we did not design what was naturally needed for the child at that particular stage of development. So today our whole concentration on developmental stages of children is so that each one of us explores them a bit more, understands what is needed at each of these stages, and does not hurry up the curriculum and just put it in because it has to be done. So stages of development are very important for all of us to understand, go through them, read them. It doesn't matter whether you're an early years teacher or a middle school teacher or a high school teacher, but it's good to just understand the expanse, because if you are an early years teacher, you also have to know what's coming ahead. And if you're already teaching children at a later stage, you must be very conscious of what the child has already gone through. So I think this will definitely help us to create a more, deeper thought and understanding of each activity that we add to the children's curriculum. And I do hope that this little episode that I've put together gives us a perspective, and we'll see you very soon in our next episode. Thank you so much.
Square Panda.